we are going to purchase to bring to our English learner students between 5th grade and 12th grade, as well as our recently reclassified English learner students. I learned about this through people at the County Office of Ed and from other folks in other districts, and it's a really, really neat program. Other districts that have purchased and are jumping on, La Cañada, John's Old District, Irvine, Laguna Beach, Long Beach, Pasadena Unified, are all jumping in on this. It's a really, really neat way for kids to get instantaneous access to a tutor through a chat. And it syncs to Aries. So if they're in their math class or they're in math, they can click on their math teacher's icon. It'll bring them into this system. Within 30 seconds, they'll have a math tutor who's a college student or a grad student who will work them through the Socratic method. So they're all trained in the Socratic method to help students work their way through the problems. There's no getting an answer. If they had a test tomorrow, they could go in and say, I'm having a problem with this type of problem, and they could work on that. The neat thing is that the teachers, because it's linked through Aries, the actual teachers will have access to the conversations. Everything is transparent. So teacher A, the math teacher, can go back in and go into the system and look at what was that student working on with the tutor, and look at where they were having problems, where they were struggling, and actually will know more about that student's thought process. It's really, really neat. There's also an essay upload component with a 24-hour turnaround, and readers will review and provide feedback on the conventions of language and what have you. And also, if there's issues with content, we'll push them towards their teachers to work on what their teacher was trying to get them to do. They also can access subjects outside of their schedule. So a student could theoretically want to go on and learn more about computer science, could go on and ask tutors questions and learn on their own. And so part of that, we wanted to increase and improve services for our English learners. I think this is a great way to start. And I think we're going to be looking at using some of the CARES Act funding for this year to be able to cover the costs. Some districts have gone, larger scale, provided to all their high school students and what have you. We wanted to ease our way in. I will have some extra licenses available within the 100 that we are purchasing that we could push to some of our homeless students and other students who are struggling or have a need that are identified by the site. So there'll be a little reserve there that we'll be able to use, and the other sites will be able to use as well. So I'm asking that you approve this vendor agreement so we can get the ball rolling on paper ink for our students.
Sounds to me like a pretty valuable piece of software in terms of what it can do. Sarah, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Blaze. This software sounds incredible with all of the features and functions it'll provide our ELL students. And my question is around training and the rollout of this. What does that look like for the teachers, and then also for our ELL students who will be using this? Because since it is 24/7, they're obviously using it without a teacher. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so we will, once we have agreed with them, they will then provide us with some training materials. We'll be looking at developing something for the teachers. I talked to Colin about this a little bit, but we'll be putting something together. We don't have the whole plan on the actual rollout yet because we really need to get it in our hands to see how we will do that. It will take probably a few weeks for us to get that process taken care of. We will focus on the ELD teachers because they will be like the primary folks that we train first, and then we will train the other staff members about this, that they have access to their EL students within the system. So it'll be a roll through some different things, but Colin and I are going to be working on how we get that out, probably asynchronously to the staff that are non-ELD, and probably live meetings with the ELD staff so they can kind of be the initial managers of the system, really watching and knowing it back and forth, so then they can help their other teachers on site when they're digging in on the kids.
Is there a component to this, Blaze, that will give some parents training as well?
I'm not sure. We can look at that. I'm sure we're going to roll that out to parents. It's not something we're going to put in the hands of kids without letting the parents know that this is what the tool we're handing them. So we'll make parents aware, and I believe there are, parent materials. The nice thing is you can get tutoring in both English and Spanish. And so really valuable if you have a Spanish speaking parent, the Spanish speaking parent can go in with the kid when they're at home. They can ask questions in Spanish. That parent can help them in Spanish, even if the kid's doing the stuff in English. They can, have that interaction. So it does provide access for those parents as well to the tutors with their child. So yeah, there's definitely a parent component to it. We have yet to put all that together. Like I said, we're trying to get the contract in place, and then we will, once we receive the materials, we'll push forward on that.
Okay.
Blaze, besides Sarah stealing my exact first question, I only have one question now.
Okay.
When we're doing any type of pilot, one of the key things is what's the measurement to see success or not before we look to take it wider. So if you don't currently know what that is, it's either taking a survey or some measurement that you say that this is a success for the dollars. So do you have that in mind already? And if not, that's fine, because it can be put in place before we actually get through the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing will be a usage metric. We'll be able to look at how much is it actually being used. It's hard to put a success rate on, if it's hard to measure if a kid did better on his test because of, they had that. I think we can measure the amount that we're using it. And oftentimes with the educational software stuff that we have, a lot of what we judge things on is usage. How much is it being used? Is it valuable? If kids are not using it, then
I think that's a completely fair metric and very easy to measure. It's also something that is just simply a number. So that's great.
And I think we'll also survey teachers about, how they are able to interact in the system, if it's helpful for them to go back and see what the students are working on, if it's been of value to them. So we'll have some way to, vet that out with the teachers as we go forward with it.
And then as far as the seats are always can be something that's complicated. Is it the first student who gets it and then that's booked for the year? Or is it something if they're not using it, then we see the usage drop, which means we can recycle that seat?
No, this is a single use.
So we assign a student to that seat for the full year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and I have approximately 79 folks pre-assigned. It's going to leave me about 21 to play with in the initial, and I can always expand if we're finding success with it. It's something we can look at expanding to larger groups. I know Dan Morgan, when I told him about this, was like, I'm going to find my site budget and we're going to get this to, we're going to get this out. And I said, well, let's hold on, let's try it. Let's start with a group that we really want to see if it benefits, and then go from there. And if it's something that is really valuable and we see it really, and kids really like it and teachers like it, and it's really having a positive effect, then we can look at that. Things are not cheap out there right now. All these services and all of the online components we've brought in through the CNI budget, we've increased our budget.
It's also
quite a bit in those areas this year for the need.
I was going to say, Blaze, it's also possibly it's more effective at one level than another. It could be, but I think Todd's right. I think we have to get a database going and then draw some conclusions in how we would evaluate its effectiveness.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a good deal to me.
Thanks, Blaze.
Yeah, I think the one value is that it's something when we're in this distance learning, it's another way that a kid can get support when they don't necessarily have access to their teacher in the building right now. And even if we were in a hybrid, you're not going to be in the building every day. And so this is a way for you to have access when you're not in the building to somebody to help you.
How about community? Anything from the community on this particular item?
Yes, there's a question or a hand raised for Jill Lewis.
Okay.
Jill, there you go.
Again. Yes, it's me again. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I just see like a huge disconnect here because we're talking about something that might come out in a few weeks or a month. And like parents don't want any more distance learning. And we're in a deficit right now. And we're talking about spending more money on how to improve distance learning. And we're talking about not applying for a waiver until maybe November. I think you have to explain to parents that like, are you long-term planning on distance learning? Because from this plan, like adding new things and spending more money sounds like you're planning on distance learning for the rest of 2020-21 school year. I don't want tests to have to be trained on something. I have a kinder, second, and fourth grader. I do not have 5 minutes in the morning between signing on to Zooms to drink a coffee. I can't be trained on something. I don't want to be. I just want my kids back in school. So I think there's just a huge disconnect. We have to realize that like we are suffering and our kids are suffering and we want to get off of this. And we've been hovering around 9 cases per 100,000 for the past 2 weeks. We have to be at 7 per 100,000. We're almost there. Like we're going to go into tier 2 and parents are going to want to know that we're going back to school ASAP, not that we're getting better at distance learning. Thank you.
Would you like me to respond, Carl?
Well, if you have a response, I mean, it's kind of hard to respond to, but go ahead if you wish. It's your call.
I think she's confusing what we're doing here. This is providing a service to our English learners and our recently reclassified English learners. This is something required. Well, it is required that we increase and improve services for our unduplicated students through our LCAP and our LCP. And this is one of the steps we're taking to increase and improve services for a specific subgroup of students. This would not be for every child in the district. This would be for English learners and recently reclassified English learners. So I want to clarify that. It would also be something that would be valuable for those learners, whether we were in full-time in school or out of school. It just happens in the current model, it happens to be really timely. But even if we're in school, and hopefully we will be in school full-time, this will be a valuable tool for those kids as well.
Jill, does that help explain that?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's still pushing something for distance learning. And so I think it's good that he explained that to the public, that this is something that would be very useful for, you know, not just distance learning. And so that's something us taxpayers would actually support. We'd want our money to go towards something that supports, you know, our second language students. But the distance learning part, it sounded like from above the trees that you were talking about something that's just helping for distance learning. And that just concerns the public because we don't, you know, foresee ourselves in distance learning for another 6 months. And it just sounds like the way everyone's talking about it, that you do foresee us in distance learning for another 6 months. So thank you for the clarification. And I'm all for putting my money towards that if it's something that can help these second language students in the future in distance learning or not. Thank you.
Okay. Well, at this point, board, I think we need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the request for paper education vendor agreement.
And a second.
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 Okay, Tricia?
Board President Carl Palestrini,
Yes.
Board Clerk Sarah Hines,
Yes.
Board Member Tess Arthur,
Yes.
Board Member Todd Weaver,
Yes.
Board Member Annette Eastick.
Yes.
Okay, and thanks for the clarifications on both sides of that conversation.